Hello and welcome to ETAutoSmartFactory Virtual Summit 2020. The automobile industry is undergoing substantial changes, and with that, the demand for sustainable and Industry 4.0 compatible solutions are gaining traction across the entire automotive value chain. Be it OEMs or part suppliers, everyone is focusing on implementing advanced technologies at their shop floors. So what options do manufacturers have to turn to? To answer these questions, we are joined by two eminent speakers from Indian automobile industry, Mr. Chulanga Perera, the wholly owned subsidiary of global commercial vehicle major Daimler AG, and Mr. Vinod Khode, CIO of Varroc Group, a global tier 1 automotive manufacturer. Hello, sir. I welcome both of you on this show.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
So today we will begin by asking very basic questions, which is on the deployment of automation technique. So my first question is to you, Mr. Perera, that how do you see the process of deployment of automotive techniques in the Indian manufacturing setup, and what kind of suggestions do you what kind of recommendations would you like to put forth to the companies to spur this adoptions going forward?
So, Shruti, see, in my opinion, there's no one specific answer that will cater and suit every industry or OEM. I can take, for example, for us, it was very important for us to understand our maturity within DICV, which is Daimler India Commercial Vehicles, and see that, there were certain levels of automation which was required, and then there were certain levels where we had to keep it as is. Multiple factors came into why we kept things as is because we did not need advanced automation, as the investment would not pay back the benefits that we would look at. However, we go into basics, for example, of process re-engineering, using a little bit of RPA, using a little bit of AI, using some chatbots, for example, for end-of-line inspection, just to make sure we validate certain things to reduce the number of errors, increase the efficiency, but in the end, later use the data that we collect to optimize our existing processes. So that became sort of like our foundation layer for us to build on top. And for me, in my opinion, everything else in terms of advanced technologies, when you talk about more AI, AR, VR, and then you look at digital twin and additive manufacturing, those are a little bit further ahead of the curve. So we had to find that right balance of understanding what really fits our needs at the moment with the significant payback that we see. And then the last portion of this is to understand the infrastructure. So there's always this debate about, is it on-prem, is it cloud, or is it hybrid? And I think it differs from OEM to OEM, industry to industry. And we, looking at our factory of the future, we have decided to go with a hybrid version, where we anticipate almost a petabyte of IoT data from our shop floor. That is coming mostly from the machines that we have connected, and also from a lot of the external data that we use within our data lake to look at analytics to optimize our operations.
Right. So my next question is to you, Mr. Khode, that I would like you to give a perspective of Indian auto component supplier, like how they are deploying automation at their shop floor to streamline the manufacturing process and accelerate the ROI.
Yeah, so I can talk about Varroc and then some key points that we, as a peer group, that we have discussed amongst our other industry. So what is driving the need is something that we probably need to understand is, especially, like look, last year, all automotive companies were going through a turn, and then pandemic added to it. And what has that done is it has added a certain amount of uncertainty in terms of volatility, that someday you have a demand and then in next week you don't have a demand for certain things which is not in your control. So of course we know this pandemic is not going to be there forever, but this has taught us a lesson that how can you be flexible and you can respond to such demands on the go. So the kind of thing that we at least are looking at is how can we be flexible to such changes and respond to this. So what has happened is that when I talked about demand, the laborers, and the labor position has been quite tricky, that one day you have a set of labor and next day they are not there in the plant. And the constant pressure to keep the prices down. We are a B2B, we would supplying to the big OEMs, and they are also under pressure from the customer to keep the prices down. So these 3-4 factors are adding to the need is what to automate. Then what to automate is try to maximize the investment that you made in your plant, which is like increasing your capex and in utilization of the capex investment. How do you do is you can keep on measuring is, are you utilizing your investment fully? Now you're going towards the OE or OP. So overall plant efficiency, overall equipment efficiency. And to do that, it's like you have to keep on measuring on daily basis, shift basis, monthly basis, and take in data. As Mr. Perera was saying, that petabytes of data is what they would be generating. One set of data will be coming from your equipment, the lines, the machines and all which you are using to produce something or give a service. So at a top level, you need to know what are the things that you need to measure and collect that data, because there's no point in just putting sensors and collecting data and not to do anything with that data. So one big thing that what we are trying to do is at a top level, at a management level, at the middle management level, we should be very clear what is the data that we need and how are we going to use it and make a sense out of it, so that we can take decisions and pass on this benefit, whether you're a B2B or OEM or you're directly facing the customer, pass on that benefit to the customer, because at the end we all need to remember whatever we are doing is for the customer. If you do it like if you just keep on investing, you're pumping in money and there's no use. So to answer your question is OEE, OPE is one area that people are putting in a lot of investment. And then on top of that, you also need to make sure that when you need your machines and plant and lines to run, they run, which means they need to be in the top-notch condition. So which means the maintenance has to be like, as far as possible, what we are doing today is all manual. So we are logging the data, and we, as of today, we can get our mean time between failure and all those reports from a system, people using various systems. But then with these sensors that you can put on your machine, you will be able to predict. And that's where there are certain areas, and then you don't need to do it on all machines. So you, as a team, you need to find out what is your critical to quality station, which impacts, what are your bottleneck station. And if the station is not working, which means the downstream impact is there. So try to identify these and try to put these solutions on those machines where you can get the maximum output. So these are the places where we are trying to, at least as a Varroc, we are putting our heads together and trying to get into those areas.
Mr. Perera, my next question is to you. Yours is a global company, and so how do you see the pace of adoption of automation in India as compared to the global ones? Like before pandemic and after the pandemic, what has been changed in this 3-4 months? What kind of like proactiveness you see within the manufacturers, especially the OEMs, towards adopting these kind of trends?
Shruti, my opinion here is, I'll take a generic one first and then get to Daimler. I think the pandemic has created a much more awareness of the need for digitalization. There's, of course, a common saying that it's accelerated. I find it a little bit hard to believe that any organization can accelerate just because of the pandemic, because people were doing digitalization or trying to get into automation even before the pandemic. And I think companies were heavily investing because the technological advancements that were happening, if OEMs or anybody did not keep up, they were always behind the 8 ball. So I'm of the perception that everybody was doing, but now what has happened is across the value stream, everybody has realized that the pandemic, what the pandemic brought is the need and the awareness to invest more heavily into automation. Yeah. So for a company like Daimler, of course, we have the capabilities across the world. But what we also do is we try to cater our solutions based on the country and the need of that plant. So what works for us in Germany sometimes does not directly work for us here in India. So that is where we have to differentiate ourselves. And in India, we are greenfield, company. We are merely just about 8 years old. And for us, starting as a greenfield company, a lot of things were put in place for us to be quite well advanced. Our machines are newer, the processes are better. If you even look at us from a couple of years ago itself, we had wearable devices already integrated. We had a lot of automation even within our tools. Yeah? Even if you look at our end-of-line inspections that were happening, we were always moving away from manual to more digital using tabs. So that has already been there. What has now happened for Daimler India is that within the pandemic, we've realized that we need to utilize this situation to, one, test out newer technologies or cutting edge technologies that we have in the past sort of pushed away. And here I'm talking about more specifically towards a digital twin, or looking at 3D printing, for instance, digital twin mostly for simulation, and then using a lot of AR and VR to collaborate between our plants and other entities outside of India. So this has gotten accelerated a lot for Daimler India commercial vehicles. So I think now as we progress, technology will of course advance, and hopefully we will be on par with the global standards and the best in class for manufacturing, because I think that's the need of the hour for us to be ahead of the curve.
Mr. Khode, would you like to add something and give us a comparison between the global standards that are being followed in automation and what's happening in India right now?
Yeah, I think I can speak from my previous role that I was doing in another company. You see that the bigger the company is, the slower is the ability to adapt to a new change or new technology. And there is a reason why you go cautiously, because it's like you are trying to spread across the globe and you're trying to implement something which is similar. But in case of, I would say Varroc also has a presence about 18 location across the globe where we are known as Varroc lighting system, and we are supplying to likes of Tesla and Audi. So there we are also trying to do the similar work. Is again in terms of implementing a new solution, we are as Mr. Perera said, that we were evaluating things, but because of the pandemic, we have seen a need and a pain that, hey, I wish this was already there. We would have been able to see it better in terms of a control and not depend on somebody who is not able to come to office. So that need has, got the acceptance of that solution or proposal to the management. Now there is a lot of listening which is happening, which as compared to what it was happening earlier. So as Mr. Perera said, yeah, he's right that everybody was trying to do something. It's not like everybody's starting from scratch right now, but it has accelerated. And like in case of India, we have already floated an RFP and we are talking to various people. And at the same time, we are trying to find a solution which we can implement across the globe for Varroc as a group. So I would say, based on what I have seen, there are plants where I've seen in US where it was fully automated. You don't, there were robots bringing in the material, raw material from there to the shop floor and taking the finished good back. So from that to something which is totally manual. So there are extremes there everywhere. But I would say the adoption rate in the places like US, China, and Europe is a lot more, especially in Europe where it's Germany who started all this automation. Industry 4.0 was coined by primarily, I would say, in Germany, and they are far ahead of us. If you talk about likes of Bosch or Siemens, they try this on themselves and then they sell the solution to others. So they're far ahead of us. And I would say India and other places are catching up.
So as you both mentioned that automation is the best way to monitor the efficiency of your machines and processes. So if I ask you that, can you pick 3 advanced automation technologies which can have a big impact on auto manufacturing? I'll start with you, Mr. Khode. If you can pick 3 or 4 prime advanced automation technologies.
For the automobile companies?
Yes.
Yeah, I see. What I feel is this automation, just trying to do it in the plant is not going to, have that much value. So we have to look at the whole value stream process. You see, the demands from the customer and their expectation are quite high. So it's the new product development process starts from there. That if there is something somebody is asking, you need to be very agile to convert that into a prototype. Then if it is accepted, convert it into a viable project where you start producing, it means the procurement is involved. And then you get when procurement is involved, they'll go for the least price raw material to put it together, lean manufacturing, then dispatch. And then if you are into like a B2B or you service, you also need to take care of the service part. So it's the full value stream that you have to look at to give the, the value to the customer. So I would say in the automobile industry, we need to be focusing on trying to have agile process for new product development, in lean manufacturing using this technology like Industry 4.0. And then as Mr. Perera said, and I've seen there are a lot of places where you have wearable devices there. The digital twin is definitely going to help in this type of scenario where the senior person sitting at home will be able to monitor. Then people are using augmented reality for the plant maintenance and also for the service, where there are very few experienced people, but they are sitting at home. They are not in the plant to rectify the problem which is in the line, or there is a problem in the field on a product which has been sold, and then it has to be repaired, and you put in your augmented reality and you'll be able to talk to 10 people at the same time and help them. So this is something which is now becoming cheaper and is picking up. In terms of manufacturing, the platforms, the IoT platform are becoming very popular and cheap. What it gives you agility to develop things fast, and you will be able to produce more. At the same time, when I talk about procurement and service and all, we are collecting a large amount of data. So data lake is picking up, and you need to have a lot of investment done for having a data scientist or having a partner who can convert this gold mine into something which is like actionable insights, using which you can improve your product quality, decision making. So which means like the data is important, and you need to do a lot of things with the data using data scientists and all that. So machine learning, augmented reality is something which is going to pick up, which is going to use all this data to improve the insights. I think these are the one which comes on top of my head.
Mr. Perera, your take on this?
Yeah. So I think I fully agree with what Mr. Vinod said, and I think it's the entire value stream to what he said, because my take is that we automating or using any technology will only be a siloed way of working. Because if my suppliers are not at the same level, or they don't have, or they don't grow along with us, it becomes very difficult. I'll use an example of just in sequence. So this is something that we are implementing within Daimler Commercial Vehicles, and then we are picking up a lot of traction for it. But at the same time, we also wanted to make sure that our top suppliers are also moving along with us. So again, that's one area where we are jointly working to ensure that the entire ecosystem is there. Now, to answer your question, you asked about 3 technologies. I've always been very vocal about this. I think for me, I'm not very technology centric. And I say why. For me, it's a problem first approach. Yeah. I look at the problem, and then there is an ample amount of technology that can help me solve that problem. If I just pick 1 or 2 buzzwords or technologies that are important, I become very handicapped when I have to implement it, because then I'm just trying to implement the technology for the sake of it. Yeah? So if it is 3 that I had to pick, it will be very difficult for me. But I can tell you, for us within DICV, we look at RPA is, of course, just to improve your manual processes and automate, get the repetitive things done. But machine learning is one area, and we are looking heavily at automating or using technologies that can help our warehouse to be more optimized in terms of how we stack, picking things up, identifying where things are, because the warehouse operations is sort of like our backbone, especially for aftermarkets, for after sales, and also within our day-to-day operations. So we're heavily investing in that. Just in sequence, like I said, is one. And then to tap all of this, we are using a lot of machine learning. Why? Is because we want to be able to forecast and be able to predict a lot, because that's going to give us a lot of insights. And be it from production planning versus sales forecasting to parts ordering. And also then when you look at just in sequence, all this is bounded by a lot of analytics that's been driven. I think Mr. Vinod touched upon it as well. So I think that is an area where we're looking at. So technology per se, we use whatever makes sense to solve that problem. But the ones I pointed out are ones that are readily and available right now within Daimler India Commercial.
So Mr. Perera, as you mentioned, that it is very crucial to keep your suppliers at the same level of automation to achieve the optimum level of production. So my question is to you, Mr. Khode, that how difficult or what kind of challenges the suppliers in India are facing currently in the deployment of automation techniques? Like, as per you, what are the major hurdles where and how, where the OEMs can help their suppliers in, you know, upping their game in adopting these kind of advanced technologies?
So again, going back to the value stream, that I'll give an example that which we are also trying to look at is automation of the. So we get a lot of raw material. We have 29 locations across India, and the raw materials are used to produce the finished good. Now, the documents which comes with these, you have to follow the law of the land in terms of regulatory, GST and all that. And there are a lot of times that there are errors on the document. So we are still not in a place where you get electronic because our suppliers are very small. And then the big suppliers, they are okay for, they're able to follow the technology. So we are trying to help them to identify from that point as that how to keep the document, the data in the document in check with what is the reality in terms of the PO, the rates and all, to the level that the quality inspection feeding it back to them about how the quality is getting impacted and what are the issues we are finding, so that the SCARs and NCMRs and the PPAP process try to give them a platform where they can participate, and instead of doing it on paper, there people come online as a portal, supplier portal, and do this activity of responding to the quality issues that we have come across or the document issue, and do it online. Wherever if we need an EDI, they don't have an EDI, then we give a platform where they can come and provide, give this input about like the advanced shipment notice and ASN. So supplier portal is something that we're planning to invest. There are some portion which is already there and some portion which we're trying to add, so that they can respond to us faster. In terms of the R&D, which we are trying to do the design process, we have to share the design document securely, and a lot of suppliers would be struggling with that. So what we have done is we have taken that on our side. We securely put it on a place where they are able to get it, and from there they can take a look at the design and tell, okay, this is feasible, not feasible, the price is going to change, things like that. And in terms of like service, if we are we have to do some service opportunity, that is where we are working together with them. But in all these places, what we are trying to do is become a partner with the supplier and not throw this over the wall to them and say, hey, you solve this problem. We are also trying to do it ourselves. And you know what, as a supplier ourselves, we are also getting the same type of help from our OEMs, whether it is Bajaj or Honda. They come up and say that, hey, we have this solution and we have this problem, let's try to solve it together. And we are picking this key from them and we are passing it downstream to our supplier. The one learning that we had from one of our big OEMs is that when the market was very volatile in the last 3-4 months, our OEMs were trying to ask us on daily basis that, okay, what is your position? Would you be able to supply this? Because their production plan was getting out of whack. So we were going on this portal and giving and promising our demands that, hey, there is a problem, there's a delay of 1 day, or you will be on time. We started doing the same thing with our supplier. So, you know, it's something that you learn from your OEM and passing it on. And as a team, we all were able to achieve our targets.
All right. My next question is to you, Mr. Perera, like how DICV is helping their suppliers for the adoption of this kind of smart manufacturing techniques, and how you are creating awareness about the efficiency of such kind of techniques and technologies.
So I think we have a concept called co-creation, and what we want to do is we want to jointly invest as well as co-create solutions or use cases that are mutually beneficial or can add value to them. And then I think that's something that we have openly gone out and extended, and whoever is willing to work with us, we are happy to participate and partner with, and we've successfully done 1 or 2 initiatives as well. So I think that is the best way, because again, understanding the maturity of the supplier, we do not understand their technological maturity sitting as an OEM. Yeah, so it's by bringing them to the table, making them aware, showing them what we have, our aspirations, and then trying to see if we can jointly develop something is probably the best way for us to proceed. And that's the route we've taken. So right now, again, it's preliminary stages that we are at. We are still trying to figure our footing. And I think in the next couple of months to come, it will mature at a much faster rate than what it is today.
Automation software is taking a center stage. So how the engagement of auto companies with the IT firms is going to take a new shape in the future? Would you like to share some of your perspective, Mr. Perera?
See, I think about even 10 years ago or 15 years ago, there was a huge gap, in my opinion, between the technology players and auto firms or OEMs or manufacturers. But that gap has drastically reduced now. So I don't think there's a huge difference between the tech players and the OEMs, just my honest opinion. But why I tend to think that is where you have technology players, their focus is predominantly on investing heavily into data. If you look at a lot of the tech companies, they have the flexibility because they don't have operations as such to run. If you look at, for example, an OEM, we have infrastructure operations which we need to run. And then, of course, we have internal processes. And then we have the dimension of keeping our customers in mind, right? We have to be as customer-centric as possible, understand our customers. And for all these three things, if it is internal efficiencies, if it's even the infra readiness and or understanding our customers, we need to have and implement the best technology that's available. So why I said that is I think right now, most OEMs or auto players are working very closely in the areas of, for example, electrification, autonomous, with the tech players, because they have the experience, the developers, the know-how of the technology. The OEMs understand the business sides and the issues that we are facing, and together you can see that the evolvement of use cases is blooming as we talk now. So if you look at even in Germany, I think Daimler is doing a lot with a lot of the tech players, which was recently brought out now. Daimler collaborated with NVIDIA. So if you look at it, these are all large tech players who are coming into play. And I think this is going to become more evident, as I stated earlier, with time.
Now, considering the operation of Indian auto component industry, the whole of the industry was very much aligned to the just-in-time kind of like a working process or operation. So, Mr. Khode, with the adoption of automation, do you think that the operation of auto component makers or the way they used to execute their business will change in the future?
Yeah, definitely it would change. And it again goes back to the same thing that we both said is the data. That just in time, you're trying to get the best inventory turns for your company. And at the same time, you're also trying to keep the bottom line in control, like the labor cost and electricity cost and all. So this is all impacting your, profitability. So in case of, like the area where you're trying to control the numbers, inventory turns, is once you have data and the patterns, you're able to do, intelligent MRPs, where your MRPs are when you're running and you're giving those demands and schedules to your supplier, they are as accurate as it can be based on the data which is in hand and the patterns that you see. And so that the data that you are collecting on day-to-day basis is going to teach you, and your machine learning is going to improve over a period of time. And it's going to also give you ability to forecast accurately. So definitely the technology is going to keep things, and also another thing which is going to get impacted is your quality. So there are certain things we talked about earlier is the quality as you produce on the line, or you're trying to machine something, or you're trying to assemble something. There are a lot of sensors and equipment which are already there, but with the augmentation of the data that you've already collected, you are able to do a better, a better slap in the hand process that, okay, this is not right. The torque was not proper, or the sequence in which you have to, tighten the bolts, there you miss something on that. which is, I think, where Mr. Perera said the variables are coming into the plants. So I think all of this is going to definitely help the auto industry to keep their costs down, be agile, and have the best quality, which is a delight to your customer.
Mr. Perera, your take on this, like where do you see and how do you think that the operation of OEMs is going to change with the deployment of automation and smart factory?
I think, Shruti, we've touched upon this a little bit earlier, but one thing I did not touch upon is to your previous question when you asked about the tech players. The tech players are very much ahead in terms of keeping up with the technology, because they adopt things like, for example, free and open source. They leverage DevOps and APIs a lot better. In terms of looking at their investments into cybersecurity, it's a lot more advanced than where OEMs are. So now when you come to your question of operational excellence, I think the only way for us to really achieve that is by also adopting this. Because when you look at your costs, first of all, it's fundamentally understanding that, for example, an area like free and open source has to be considered. There's a common misconception that it's free. It's actually not free, but you need to see that there are a lot of benefits as long as you don't abuse free and open source, which you can leverage to bring in a lot of automation and a lot of development within the organization, right? So I think adoption of these technologies, if you look at it along with OT security, in terms of securing your shop floor, along with the adoption of the free and open source that's available, leveraging the API gateways that are available to you will take you a notch ahead. I think that's what's right now missing, because everybody seems to have somehow figured their way around in terms of data, figured their way around in terms of when it comes to automation. And I think the next level is now leveraging these technologies as well.
So throughout our discussion, we are focusing very much on the data part. So considering the importance of data and its role, which the data is going to play in the future, how crucial do you think, both on the OEM and the supplier side, it is to deploy a data collection team, and what's going to be their role in going forward? Mr. Khode, we will start with you.
Okay, thanks. So I think important to understand is that we need to be very clear, either as supplier as OEM, is what is the data that we need to collect and to what extent. Because if you are trying to, for example, trying to collect the data to control the quality, nowadays with the technology which is available, with algorithm that you have built on the previous data, your machine learning can give decisions on the edge and prevent something from happening. And in that case, you probably need to get a subset of data and not the full data. So you are doing edge processing and taking enough back, because at the end you also will have to have a problem where you have a lot of data and you end up paying a lot of money for storage and all that. So the strategy and about what you want to do with the data, what do you want to collect, what do you want to do, governance, and then having a team of people, because it will not be just investment in technology, it will be process, people, and technology. You won't be able to do much if you have just one of them. So it's the whole strategy that has to be thought through very clearly, and then using that you will be able to do a lot of justice to the data which is collected. Either you do your AI, your machine learning on it, and use it for your purpose to create actionable insights, which is going to help you on the point basis when you are producing, on the month basis where you are trying to take a decision of what went wrong, or you are using this data for the full year or full next 5 years to put your strategies together and roadmaps together. This data is going to help you. So I think that has to be well thought through and governed properly, and you need to have an ecosystem of process, people, and technology as a team. And then in case of like Varroc as a group, we are also thinking of creating a center of excellence, starting with India team, where we'll be having one team which is going to be here and going to give this services across the globe to all our sites.
Before wrapping up this interesting session, a couple of questions to both of our eminent speakers. Mr. Perera, first question is to you. So if you have to rank the pace or the adoption capability of Indian OEMs in terms of these new advanced technology, how would you rank India as compared to the other big prime auto markets of the world?
In my honest opinion, I think India is far behind. If you just look at the global manufacturing best in class index, India, along with our suppliers, are quite behind. One, because we do, with India being a low-cost arbitrage country, a lot of automation is somewhat neglected. And when you neglect that, then it becomes very difficult for you to talk about all these advanced technologies and keep up. And I do understand why we do that, because sometimes the payback or the investments we make in a lot of this is not justified in a country like India. And that is why, if you ask me, I think we are far, far behind. And I also like, Mr. Vinod very rightly pointed out, if at all there is no automation within, then you do not have data. If you do not have data and data gets aggregated or stays within people's heads, or you have just, for the sake of hiring data scientists, we hire and we don't have the right strategy of having data engineers, governance. You put in data just that you do not need. You do not have a metadata concept. You can get lost. And I think I see a lot of organizations doing this and then realizing that they're sitting with large amounts of run cost. And they think, okay, now where do we go? So I think this is a common pitfall that has come, because one side continues to be manual or semi-automated. One side tends to be very far advanced and try to adopt all the technologies, and then realizes that there is no right equilibrium. So I think for us, as we become more and more, as we push for more and more localization, I think the gap between the global OEMs and how advanced they are versus us, I think has to get a bit closer. I don't think we need to be at that level. We don't need to be leading, but at least if they're at 8 out of 10, we also need to get to about 6. And right now we are looking at a score of about 4.5 at best.
Mr. Khode, would you like to share your perspective on this? That how on the supplier perspective, and also how would you see the adoption techniques of Indian automotive players as compared to the global one?
Yeah, I think Perera always said that we, as India, we have to do a lot of catch up. And one thing that I would agree with him is the justification of investment. If I'm trying to put an automation, a lot of time we find that the cost of automation and the amount that we are going to save in terms of, like, everything is ROI. So when you try to do ROI, say, are we going to have less people? And the people are cheap, and I can get plenty, and I can get as many and whenever I want. So it hurts. But if I take the same thing back to Europe and US, it's a difficult proposition. Even if somebody wants to pay, the people with that skill are not available. So automation takes easier, as compared to India, it's easier to convince, get an ROI, get it approved and implement. So that is one area. But other way also, we are a country which is full of jugards, right? So we have been doing a lot of work on that area, and we have been able to get things done with that. So that is also filling up the gap of having an automation to certain extent. But we are at a stage where there are a lot of companies who felt that if I had this, I would have been able to, instead of stopping my line, I would have come in the essential services, and last 4 months I would have been able to produce something, But it's not easy to change, adopt, and do it in a very quick place if you don't have a lot of automation. You are a little bit rigid, which means that your ability to take opportunity of a situation is directly proportional to how much automation you have done to a certain extent. And that's how I think as in India, we definitely need to take a look, because at this moment, we do have an opportunity as a country to get a lot of business, which is probably coming out from other places. And I think automation is definitely going to help, because the people who are trying to take it from some other and putting in India are going to take a keen look on these type of thing. That automation, the other thing which Mr. Perera talk about is, you can put automation, but you also have to make sure it's secure. And so security and the kind of the best internet connection and bandwidth that you have, that also need to improve.
Right. And lastly, Mr. Perera, I would like to touch upon one thing that comes hand in hand when we talk about the automation, which is the augmented worker or the augmented workforce. So when we talk about deploying such kind of advanced technology, what kind of changes can we expect in the skill sets of our worker? And if you can share your insights about the augmented workforce, is it possible in India to rank our operations or our workforce to that level?
Is it possible, Shruti? Yes. I think in my opinion, the Indian workforce is very skilled, and I think it's up there. And in terms of adopting these technologies, you will see that India adopts it better than most countries. Why? Because we grew up with a lot of technology, and I think it is quite evident, and I think everyone is used to having technology around them. What we need to keep in mind is that not everybody is of the same level, but as an organization, we need to make sure that the right training and also the change management is considered very, very well. Because otherwise you can force technology down to the people, and they could be skilled, but it is not sustainable because they will not know how to make more out of that technology. For me, it's not about just giving the technology. Technology is something that will supplement these people to become more efficient, but also they will use this technology as a base to improve further. And if they don't do that, then for me, it's just a little efficiency that you get and a savings that you might get, but you don't go to the next level. So if you look at India, the possibility of it is very high because our workforce, like I said, is quite skilled. Do we need to do that? Looking at the situation we are in, I don't know. I think we don't need to get there just yet. But it is always good for us to try, because this can be the best place to try and then show the outside world, or at least for multinational companies, India can be a proving ground. You can try your proof of concepts here and then leverage those learnings outside. So I think that's where the benefits can be maximized if done that way. Is just my opinion.
Mr. Khode, your quick comment on this.
I think when you talk about augmented workers, what I start thinking is cobots. Cobots are helping a lot, and almost all company, including Varroc, we do have cobots where we have the efficiency and the productivity has increased because of the cobot. It doesn't mean that it has taken away jobs. It's like we are able to do more with the existing line. We don't have to put another line or another shift for that. So that, and then when it comes to the other thing that we're talking about is the augmented reality solutions that we can put in place for servicing the line and providing support to the line, and trying to do the service on the field. That is another area that definitely will need a lot of investment, because those technologies are possible today. We can have a proof of concept, but trying to do a rollout of that across your field service and also all your plants and all is going to take a lot of money. So I think as it becomes cheaper, definitely India, as you know, loves technology. Like we have second in number when it comes to smartphones, like 500 million. But if you see the example, if I take that, is about only 10% of the people would be using it for doing payments and doing shopping, and that most of them are using to be on the social media, to watch video and be on WhatsApp and all that. And so the second, I would say, in terms of number of smartphones, we are at second level. But at the same time, the good news is that if you talk about the per GB cost is the least. So, in terms of the example I'm trying to give, we love technology, we adopt it very quickly, and to amazement of a lot of people. The way we are there with the smartphone thing is nobody had able to predict it accurately as we are today. So similarly, I would say in terms of adoption of technology, we'll be surprised over next 5 years if we find out, and we have the same discussion. We have moved very fast, because once things become cheaper, in India, we have an ability to get a lot of cheaper options and we are able to produce it quickly. So these technology, fortunately, and when Mr. Perera also talked about the open source thing, there are a lot of places where, if I give an example of trying to do, on the line, if you're using a technology, using a camera to catch an anomaly during the assembly. you can have the best of class camera, but you can achieve the same using NVIDIA set, and the college student have been able to demonstrate and do it. And I was quite amazed when I went to one of the college to evaluate their project. And I thought only people like us in big companies would be able to do it. So, there is a level people are trying to do things with Raspberry Pi and NVIDIA. And we are also trying in the OEMs and supplier, we are trying to do with, high investment. So there is a big spectrum, and India as a country is very good in adopting the spectrum and using the best that is for their pockets. So I still feel as a country we will catch up very fast, but definitely we have to do a lot to catch up.
All right, so with this, we have approached the end of this interesting fireside chat session. Thank you, Mr. Khode and Mr. Perera, for sharing your insights with us.